You know that feeling, right? The day or maybe 2 days after a really good workout when your muscles are just, well, they're letting you know about it. Every step, every reach, it's like a little reminder of yesterday's hard work.
Oh, yeah. That post-exercise soreness.
Exactly. We're zeroing in on that today. Delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS. And here's something that might surprise you right away. It's probably not caused by what most people think.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, DOMS is often kind of shrouded in mystery for a lot of folks. What's really going on inside our muscles to cause that delayed ache? And I think more importantly, what can we actually do about it that's based on, solid science, not just gym myths?
Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. Forget the old stories and maybe that advice your friend swears by. Our mission here is to unpack the real science behind sore muscles, looking at actual research. We've gone through a bunch of scientific articles to get you the key insights on what's truly happening when DOMS kicks in, to bust some very persistent myths and figure out what really helps you recover and maybe even prevent it.
And we're looking at some pretty robust stuff here, like meta-analyses, which combine results from lots of studies. So it gives us a clearer picture of what the overall evidence shows about muscle physiology and recovery.
Okay, let's dive in then. What is DOMS precisely? We all kind of know the feeling, but what are the official signs?
Right. So DOMS isn't just one thing. It's a collection of symptoms. They usually start cropping up maybe 12 to 24 hours after the exercise.
Okay.
Then they tend to peak in intensity somewhere between 24 and 72 hours. So day 2 or 3 is often the worst.
Right.
And then it gradually gets better over, say, 3 to 7 days. The symptoms include, obviously, muscle pain, but also tenderness if you touch the muscle, a feeling of stiffness.
Yeah, that tightness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a noticeable drop in your muscle strength. You might also find your range of motion is limited and sometimes even a bit of localized swelling.
So it's definitely more than just a minor ache. It can really affect how you move and perform for a few days. And interestingly, our sources classify DOMS as a type 1B muscle injury, delayed onset muscle pain. Sounds a bit serious, but they also say it's benign and self-limiting.
Precisely. Yeah, the injury label might sound alarming, but it basically means it's temporary. While DOMS can be pretty uncomfortable and definitely slow you down for a bit, it's generally not indicating serious long-term damage. It almost always resolves completely on its own.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Now, the main trigger for DOMS is usually exercise that your body isn't accustomed to, or exercise that's just particularly strenuous. And there's one type of muscle contraction that's the biggest culprit: eccentric contractions.
Eccentric. Okay, right. So concentric is when the muscle shortens, like lifting a weight in a bicep curl.
Yeah.
Eccentric is the opposite, when the muscle is lengthening while it's under load, like lowering that same dumbbell slowly.
Exactly. Or that classic example, running downhill. Your quads are working hard to control the descent, but they're lengthening as they do it.
Oh yeah, I remember my first real trail run with lots of downhill. My quads were absolutely screaming for days. So that makes perfect sense with the eccentric loading.
Right. And during those eccentric actions, there's a lot more strain put on the elastic parts within the muscle fibers and the connective tissue around them. This extra strain can lead to tiny disruptions, actual microscopic damage within the muscle structure. Things like myofibrillar streaming, which is basically a disorganization of the tiny protein filaments that make muscles contract, and even disruption of the Z-bands, which are key structures holding everything together.
Wow.
And what's really interesting, and maybe a bit sneaky, is that eccentric exercise often lets you generate more force than concentric. And sometimes it feels easier while you're doing it.
Really?
Yeah, this sort of low-cost, high-force thing means you can actually cause more microdamage than you realize at the time.
Okay, so unaccustomed or intense eccentric work causes these tiny disruptions. But what's actually causing the soreness we feel a day or two later, it's not immediate.
No, it's not. That delay is key. The soreness itself is the result of a whole cascade of events that starts after that initial microtrauma. And it's important to stress, we're not talking about big muscle tears here.
Right, microscopic.
Exactly. Damage at a really tiny ultrastructural level. This involves stuff like swelling inside the muscle cells, some damage to the tiny blood vessels, a bit of breakdown of muscle protein structures, and even disruptions to the communication networks within the cells.
Wow, okay. That sounds like a lot happening beneath the surface. I think I read something about a protein called titin playing a role too.
Yes, titin. It's this huge elastic protein inside muscle fibers. It's really important for force production, especially during those eccentric contractions we talked about. And under excessive strain, titin itself can get damaged. This damage is thought to be a big contributor to that feeling of stiffness and soreness that comes with DOMS.
So the muscle fibers get a bit banged up, even this giant protein titan takes a hit. But the soreness still isn't instant. That 12 to 24-hour delay is really the defining feature, isn't it?
Absolutely. That delay happens because following the initial microdamage, your body mounts an inflammatory response. It's basically the cleanup and repair crew arriving.
Ah, okay.
Immune cells, like neutrophils and monocytes, which turn into macrophages, start moving into the damaged area. Their job is to clear out the cellular debris and release signaling molecules.
And those signaling molecules, that's where the inflammation comes in, the stuff that causes pain.
Precisely. They release pro-inflammatory cytokines, things like interleukin-6, IL-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNF-alpha. These chemicals do a couple of things. They make the nerve endings in the muscle more sensitive, which leads to the pain sensation.
Okay.
And they also attract more immune cells to the site to help with the repair job. We can actually measure this systemically. You see higher levels of things like creatine kinase, CK, LDH, pentraxin-3, and C-reactive protein, CRP, in the blood after muscle-damaging exercise. These are objective signs of that damage and inflammation.
So inflammation often gets a bad rap, but here it's actually a necessary part of healing, even though it makes us uncomfortable. That's a crucial point.
Exactly right. While that inflammatory response is what causes a lot of the pain and tenderness of DOMS, it's absolutely essential for repairing the tissue and ultimately for adaptation, making the muscle stronger and more resilient for next time. The immune cells clean up the mess and kickstart the rebuilding process.
Okay. Now, our sources also mention some newer, maybe more cutting-edge theories about DOMS beyond just the microdamage and inflammation. What's the latest thinking?
Yeah, there are some really interesting angles being explored. One involves these things called piezo ion channels, specifically piezo2, which are found in nerve endings within the muscles.
Piezo channels.
Yeah, the idea is that the mechanical stress from eccentric exercise might directly activate these channels. They basically turn physical force into an electrical nerve signal. So this could potentially trigger pain signals quite early on, maybe explaining why some people feel a bit sore relatively quickly.
Huh. So a more direct link between the physical force and the pain signal itself. Interesting. What else?
Another area getting attention is the role of mitochondria, the cell's power plants. The thinking is that mechanical damage can make mitochondria dysfunctional. They become less efficient, and they start producing more reactive oxygen species, or ROS, basically harmful byproducts.
Okay, oxidative stress.
Exactly. This oxidative stress can then worsen the initial injury, damage other cell parts, and actually promote more inflammation. It can become a bit of a vicious cycle where damaged mitochondria release signals that further trigger the immune system.
So the initial damage messes up the energy production, leading to more harmful stuff that makes things worse.
Got it.
Precisely. And one more recent idea is the neural microdamage hypothesis. This suggests the primary problem might actually be tiny compressions of the sensory nerve endings within the muscle spindles, those receptors that tell your brain about muscle.
We're getting squeezed. Kind of, during those forceful eccentric contractions. And the delayed pain, in this view, isn't just from muscle fiber damage, but maybe from changes later on in how those nerve signals are processed, possibly involving something like the gate control theory of pain.
So it might not all be about the muscle fibers themselves, but the nerves within them getting affected first. Okay, that definitely paints a more complex picture than just torn muscle fibers. Now, let's tackle a big one. The myth that just won't quit. Lactic acid. For years, that was the explanation for next-day soreness. What's the real science?
Oh boy, the lactic acid myth. Yeah, the scientific consensus is crystal clear. Lactic acid does not cause DOMS.
Right.
It's incredibly persistent, probably because lactate is associated with that burning feeling you get during intense exercise. That immediate burn is due to a temporary buildup of hydrogen ions, lowering the pH in the muscle.
Yeah, that makes sense why people connect the two. You push hard, you feel the burn, then later you're sore. Easy leap to make mentally.
Totally understandable. But numerous studies have directly tested this and found no link. There's a classic study comparing level running, which produces high lactate, but usually not much DOMS, with downhill running.
Ah, the eccentric workout again?
Exactly. Downhill running often results in lower lactate levels during the exercise, but causes significant DOMS afterwards. The results were clear. Lactate levels during exercise didn't predict DOMS at all.
That seems pretty conclusive. So what happens to that lactic acid or lactate after we stop exercising if it's not hanging around causing trouble?
It gets cleared up pretty quickly, actually. Usually within an hour or two after you finish. That's long before DOMS even starts to show up, remember?
Right, the timing is completely off.
Completely off. Plus, our understanding of lactate has changed. It's not just waste, it's actually a fuel source for other tissues like your heart, and even plays roles in cell signaling. So that acute burn during exercise and the delayed soreness after are totally separate things with different causes.
Okay, myth officially busted. Good riddance. Lactic acid is off the hook. So now we know it's mostly micro damage and inflammation from eccentric exercise. What actually helps once the soreness sets in? Let's talk management. Active recovery. First, like light exercise when you're sore.
Yeah, active recovery like light cycling, walking, gentle movements, it can provide some temporary relief from DOMS discomfort. Some studies show it reduces how sore you feel.
Okay.
The thought is maybe it increases blood flow, helps clear some metabolic stuff, though not lactate.
No.
Or maybe it affects pain perception via that gate control theory again, where other sensations can sort of distract from the pain signals.
Makes sense.
But it's important to be realistic. While it might make you feel better temporarily, the evidence doesn't really show it speeds up the actual repair deep in the muscle tissue significantly. The main benefit seems to be symptom relief in the moment.
So a light walk might ease the stiffness for a bit, but it's not a magic bullet for faster healing. Okay, what about temperature? Ice baths, heat packs, that whole area.
Right, cryotherapy, especially cold water immersion, or CWI. Meta-analyses generally show it can be effective at reducing how sore you feel, especially in the first day or two, even up to 96 hours.
How cold and for how long, typically?
Usually around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, so pretty chilly for about 10 to 20 minutes. The idea is it might slow nerve signals, reducing pain, and cause vasoconstriction, potentially limiting swelling and that initial inflammation. But it's worth noting, some research suggests while it helps with the subjective feeling, it might not significantly change objective markers of damage or affect long-term adaptation.
So good for the ouch factor, maybe less impact on the underlying process. What about heat? A warm bath often feels good on sore muscles.
Heat or thermotherapy is generally recommended once DOMS is set in, maybe a day or two after. It's considered good for reducing both pain and stiffness.
How does it work?
Warmth increases blood flow locally, boosts metabolic activity, and can help relax the muscle, easing that tight feeling. Hot packs directly on the sore spot seem particularly effective for pain relief, according to some studies. Like cold, though, its direct impact on the rate of repair isn't super clear.
And what about alternating? Contrast water therapy, hot then cold.
Yeah, CWT. There's some evidence it might provide a small but statistically significant reduction in DOMS. The theory is the alternating temps create a kind of pumping action in the blood vessels.
Oh, okay.
Helping flush out waste products and reduce swelling. The effect seems potentially beneficial, but maybe not dramatically so, and more research on the best ways to do it is still needed.
Okay, temperature can definitely help manage symptoms. What about hands-on stuff, massage or foam rolling?
Massage comes out looking pretty good in the research. It consistently shows up as one of the more effective ways to reduce DOMS symptoms and fatigue. Yeah, studies show it can decrease soreness, improve muscle function like strength, and even lower some markers of damage and inflammation afterwards. It probably works through multiple ways, improving fluid flow, calming down nerve excitability, and maybe even just the psychological benefit of feeling cared for.
Massage sounds great, but not always practical. Foam rolling is more accessible. Does that help?
Foam rolling, or self-myofascial release, also shows potential. It can help reduce that muscle tenderness and maybe lessen the drop in performance you get when you're sore.
Similar mechanisms to massage?
Probably, yeah. Fluid dynamics, neural effects, but maybe not quite as potent as a hands-on massage. Consistency seems important with foam rolling. Recommendations often suggest maybe 20 minutes after exercise, and then maybe daily for the next day or two.
Okay, so self-massage is a decent tool. What about compression gear? Those tight sleeves and leggings are everywhere now.
Compression garments have shown they can reduce how sore people feel, sometimes even up to 4 days after exercise. The idea is the external pressure helps limit swelling in the spaces between cells and encourages fluid reabsorption back into circulation, possibly improving blood flow too. Some research even hints they might be more effective for people who are already well-trained and could help restore strength and power a bit faster.
Interesting. So maybe more benefit if you're already fit. Now, what about popping pills? NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, lots of people take those after a tough session.
Yeah, super common. But the meta-analysis we looked at actually found no significant benefit of NSAIDs over placebo for DOMS pain.
Wow, really? No benefit?
Statistically significant benefit, no. Plus, there's some concerns that NSAIDs might actually interfere with the muscle's natural repair and adaptation processes, the very things you want to happen after exercise. Some experts even suggest physiotherapy approaches might be better overall. So, given the lack of strong evidence for DOMS pain relief and potential downsides, routinely using NSAIDs just for soreness probably isn't the best idea.
That's actually really surprising. So maybe skipping the ibuprofen and trying massage or cold therapy is more evidence-based? Okay, what about stretching? The thing everyone says you must do to avoid soreness.
Stretching. Another huge belief that unfortunately doesn't really hold up to scientific scrutiny for DOMS. A major Cochrane review, which is like the gold standard for evidence synthesis, concluded that stretching, whether you do it before exercise, after, or both, does not produce clinically important reductions in DOMS.
None.
Any effect, if there is one, is likely so small you wouldn't notice it. So while stretching is definitely important for flexibility and range of motion,
Sure.
don't count on it to prevent or treat your muscle soreness. That's a big disconnect between common practice and the science.
Wow. Okay, another myth busted. So we've covered managing DOMS, but preventing it seems even better. What does the research say about being proactive?
The number one most effective prevention strategy, hands down, is something called the repeated bout effect, or RBE.
Repeated bout of...
Yeah, it's this amazing phenomenon where doing just one bout of eccentric exercise gives you significant protection against soreness from a similar workout later on days, weeks, even months later.
Seriously, like your muscles remember.
Kind of. It's like they develop a memory of that stress and adapt to become way more resistant, that really tough workout you did.
Yeah.
It might actually be the best thing to stop you being as sore next time you do something similar. It's fascinating.
That sounds incredible. How does that work? What's happening physiologically?
It's complex, involving adaptations on multiple levels. Your nervous system gets better at recruiting muscle fibers more efficiently. Your connective tissues might get a bit tougher. The inflammatory response to the second bout is usually much less intense. The muscle fibers themselves become more resilient to damage, maybe even by adding tiny new contractile units called sarcomeres to spread the load better. And biochemical pathways related to pain and inflammation get modulated as a whole system upgrade, basically.
So one tough session primes you for the future. That's huge for training planning.
Absolutely. And this protection can last quite a while, weeks, maybe even months. The practical takeaway: if you know you're going to do a new challenging workout, especially one with lots of eccentric work, doing a lower intensity version of that same exercise, maybe a week or two beforehand, can dramatically reduce the DOMS you get from the main event, like an inoculation workout.
That's a fantastic practical tip, a primer workout. What else helps prevent it?
Well, closely related to the RBE is just smart exercise progression. Gradually increasing the intensity, duration, or volume of new stuff, especially eccentric exercises, over maybe 1 or 2 weeks. Let your body adapt continuously. It's like mini RBEs all the time. The golden rule: avoid too much too soon.
Makes sense. Listen to your body, progress gradually. What about warm-ups and cool-downs? We know stretching isn't the answer for soreness.
Yeah, the specific evidence for warm-ups and cool-downs preventing DOMS is pretty limited and inconsistent. They have other benefits, for sure, prepping the body, easing back down.
Right.
But don't rely on them as your main DOMS prevention tool. Some research hints an aerobic warm-up might offer some local protection, but overall they're way less impactful than the RBE and gradual progression.
Okay, so focus on that initial exposure and steady increases. What about nutrition? Any foods or supplements that help prevent or lessen DOMS?
Yes, there's some promising research here. Omega-3 fatty acids, EPA, and DHA from fish oil have anti-inflammatory effects, and consistent intake, maybe 1.8 to 3 grams a day, might help reduce DOMS severity.
Okay.
Taurine, an amino acid, might help reduce oxidative stress. Dosages around 50 milligrams per kilograms of body weight, sometimes with BCAAs, have been studied. Polyphenol-rich foods, think tart cherry juice, pomegranate juice, have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties that could help. Specific dosages of cherry juice concentrate, for instance, have shown effects. Caffeine, acting as an adenosine blocker, might reduce pain perception, typically around 5 milligrams per kilogram before and sometimes after exercise. And lastly, long-term collagen peptide supplementation, alongside training, shows some potential for improved recovery and anti-inflammatory effects.
So focusing on anti-inflammatory foods, maybe some strategic caffeine, but it sounds like consistency is key, not just popping something right before a workout.
Exactly. For most of these nutrients, the benefits for DOMs seem to come from regular, long-term intake, building up those protective effects, rather than just a single dose right around exercise.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this all up. It sounds like DOMS is basically micro damage and inflammation after unaccustomed eccentric exercise. Definitely not lactic acid.
Correct.
If you do get sore, things like massage, cold water, heat, compression can help manage the symptoms. Stretching, probably not so much for soreness relief. NSAIDs, maybe surprisingly, also lack strong evidence for DOMS pain.
That's a good summary of the management side.
But the real key seems to be prevention. Leveraging that amazing repeated bout effect with a primer workout and just progressing gradually, plus maybe some long-term nutritional support.
You got it. That really highlights understanding the why behind DOMs, helps you make smarter choices about training and recovery. It's about working with your body's adaptation process.
So for you listening, maybe think about how you could use that repeated bout effect. Could you do a lighter version of a tough hike or a new lifting routine a week before the real deal?
Yeah. Or consider which recovery methods actually fit your life and seem to help you feel better, keeping in mind that some old standbys like stretching aren't really targeting DOMs effectively.
And maybe dig a little deeper into some of those nutritional ideas if they sparked your interest, or really nail down how the RBE applies to your specific sport or activity.
Ultimately, it's about being informed, experimenting a little, and finding that sweet spot for challenging your body effectively while minimizing unnecessary discomfort.